As of now, would you pencil Valtteri Puustinen into the Penguins' top 6 for the start of next season? You guys voted on X at Ice-Burgh Podcast. 57% said yes, you would pencil him into the top 6 for the start of next season. 43% said no, and there were a couple comments, most of them saying probably a third-line role is what's best for Valtteri Puustinen. So, Horwat, let me ask this to you. Would you pencil Puustinen in to the Penguins' top 6 for 2024-25 at this moment?
Yeah, I think I would. Very easily, almost. Judging by, without making any outside additions, just trying to draw up a lineup considering only the forwards that are in the organization already, and only by subtraction, who I think will or should be departing this summer. He still flies into the top 6 as Evgeny Malkin's right winger, or if you want to adjust Malkin and throw him on another wing, he's still in the top 6 as somebody fills into center there. That's just my thought of it. I get where people will come from with the bottom 6 because we just don't know what's coming this summer. We don't know what kind of additions are going to be made. Maybe Kyle Dubas goes out and gets a piece that obviously fits above Valtteri Puustinen in this situation, and provides depth scoring, which is still something the Penguins need. But for now, I'd say, without knowing the outside additions that could come in, yes, with this roster right now, going into next season, Valtteri Puustinen is easily still right where he is in that top 6.
Initially, I agreed with you right off the bat. At first, I was like, okay, this is an easy answer. It's a definite yes. And then you start to think a little bit more about the construction of this team right now. In the top 6, obviously, you're going to have Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin down the center. There's guys that were going to be top 6 wingers going into next season and are not going to depart, aka a Michael Bunting, who was just acquired and has 2 years left on his contract. He can be penciled into the top 6. He's a guy that has played in the top 6 for Kyle Dubas teams in the past. And then there's Brian Rust, who has that no trade clause, who you expect fully to not be going anywhere this summer. But then it gets a little murky. Riley Smith, Rickard Rakell, what does their future have in store? Because if both of them end up coming back, which I highly doubt, but there's still a chance that both of them end up coming back, I feel like that bounces Puustinen. And the biggest thing for me is, while yes, I've enjoyed watching Puustinen this year, 33 games played, his first actual long-term stint as an NHLer, but only 2 goals. Yeah, he has 13 points in 33 games, and that's not horrible, especially for a guy that's trying to adjust to the league on a team that is one of the worst in finishing in the National Hockey League. But 2 goals does worry me a little bit, and it makes it seem like maybe he's just playing a little bit above the level that he should. Maybe he's playing up one slot and one rung above where he would be a perfect fit at this stage of his career. And maybe that's a third line of Drew O'Connor, Lars Eller, and Valtteri Puustinen, and then maybe some outside source coming in as a top 6. So I think it is a little bit more difficult of a question to answer at this stage of the game, because like you mentioned, you don't know who's going to come in. You don't know the fate of a Rickard Rakell or a Riley Smith. But I think that what he's shown is that he deserves to be an NHLer at the start of next season. He deserves to have 1, 2, or 3 legs up on the competition on whoever's brought in to be in that bottom 6 especially. But the top 6, I think it's going to get a little bit more murky whenever you start to see how the offseason plays out.
No doubt. And I didn't even consider the statistics whenever I was answering this question. I didn't think of the just 2 goals in 30-some games, despite already being in the top 6. I think his playmaking ability has kind of hit another level here. At least there are some positives to sort of lean on when it comes to the numbers, but he seems like he's getting shooting opportunities. He's taking those opportunities to fire the puck a little more. Maybe next season comes with more goals because he'll have started there. In the NHL level, that is, he'll started there. He'll have that extra confidence coming out of the preseason, out of the training camp. A little more tutelage of, man, just fire the puck, just fire away, just keep. You're gonna find the net if you just keeping on. And who knows, maybe what some different assistant coaches have something to say. So there's all kind of factors that could go into Valtteri Puustinen. But even with those numbers, I get where you're coming from with just 2 goals isn't enough to sustain a spot in the top 6. I'd say he starts in the top 6 at least. And then if it does continue to not stick, or if he does continue to not score at the pace we're all expecting, then yeah, maybe you drop him down then. But I mean, still, just as I look at the lineup though, when it comes to the wingers for next season, barring any new additions. I mean, you putting Jesse Puljujarvi up there. I mean, he's barely getting ice time right now. You're certainly not putting Emil Bemstrom up there, I think. And who else is there? Like I said, just judging by inside movements, and obviously Rickard Rakell might still be there to take that slot. So there are names that could take it over, but I just feel like it's his spot to lose almost.
Here's the thing too. He's 24 years old.
Yeah.
Right. And I know Penguins fans don't get this very often, but he has a lot of room to grow. We haven't had a player like that in a long time in this organization and on this team. He has a lot of room to grow. Now, this is his first opportunity, 33 games. Remember what we saw from Drew O'Connor, his year-over-year progression from year 1 to year 2 to where he's at right now. And now he's been looked at as a guy that's a middle sixer, where coming into the season, the conversations around Drew O'Connor were, yeah, can he just stick at the NHL? That's going to be the big thing. Can he play all 82 games? Can he be not a fourth liner? Can he actually stick and produce enough to be a third liner? And here we are at this point in the season, some of it being because of necessity based on everybody else's progression and everybody else's injury status. But he spent more of the season in the top 6 than he has in the bottom 6 this season. So is that the type of progression you see from Valtteri Puustinen? I think that's going to be something to key in on, especially over the summer. Where does he go from here? How does he build upon what he was able to do in these 36 games? Because if you look at the underlying numbers too, they're strong. They're very strong for Valtteri Puustinen. 53% of the shot attempts at 5-on-5, 58% of the expected goals at 5-on-5 through 33 games. So it's a large sample size. This guy has an offensive knack that fits in the NHL. He just needs to build consistency and he needs to finish. And that's a huge thing for basically this entire organization, but specifically a guy who, listen, he's going to be a restricted free agent in the summer. He's currently making $775K. He's not going to command much more than that. I mean, not with 2 career NHL goals, but it's going to be a good, cheap option for your middle 6. I just don't know if I could pencil him into the top 6, knowing that Kyle Dubas is going to go under the knife and have some surgery on this forward lineup in the coming months.
Yeah, it is that uncertainty of what is going to be brought in, of who's going to be available, without looking at free agents, and not even looking at free agents, but not looking at who could return in certain trades. Who knows if Kyle Dubas hits the offseason and goes, I know we're trying to get younger and more skilled, but you know what kind of piece could bring in a young skilled asset, that is Valtteri Puustinen. You just never know what Kyle Dubas is going to bring and he's going to do, because you have to also consider, once the summer starts, this is when that conversation really steps up. Who are the Kyle Dubas guys? And who are the Ron Hextall, Jim Rutherford guys? Who's from which GM era are these players? And that's going to play a big factor into things too. I know it's a bit more of an understated factor during the season, but that is something that really does ramp up during the offseason when those moves are a bit more prevalent. So you're going to end up seeing guys like Jesse Puljujarvi and Emil Bemstrom probably catch a bit more of a push from Dubas, at least in certain offseason aspects, whereas maybe Jonathan Gruden, maybe Valtteri Puustinen kind of get, not the shaft, but get put on the back burner for guys that Kyle Dubas has brought in himself.
Yeah, that's always something where, who knows who from Sault Ste. Marie is going to be available this offseason. Like that, you got to know. You got to look into that because, Kyle loves his Sioux guys. The Sioux were so effing good, though. But, at the end of the day, you look at the top 6 and the way that it's constructed. I like the fact that Dubas is kind of shaking things up a little bit. Michael Bunting is a different type of player than we've seen in the Penguins' top 6 in a long time. Even Valtteri Puustinen is a different type of player, different caliber of player than we have seen in the top 6. It's been a lot of similar type guys. Rickard Rakell, Riley Smith, they feel like two sides of the same coin. And you can really kind of throw Brian Rust in there. The only difference is Brian Rust has a little bit more breakaway speed. Brian Rust plays a little bit better defense, and then there's Jake Gensel, who was everything that these guys were, but at a higher level. It feels like, Bunting is a much different character. Feels like Puustinen doesn't really fit into that particular mold. So I would like to see some more of these fresh faces, fresh play styles get into the Penguins top 6. And I think Puustinen is part of that. Now, at the end of the day, though, it needs changed. Like, you can't say, all right, well, you look at what you have now. under contract, you have Bunting, you have Smith, you have Raquel, you have Rust, you have Puustinen, and you have O'Connor. You have all these options, but guess what? This is for a team that is going to finish, as of right now, they're trending to finish in the bottom 10 in the National Hockey League. You need to make some drastic changes, and changing up the bottom 6 isn't going to be enough. I think the defense needs to be high priority, but right behind it is figuring out what to do to get some more scoring, because that has been, on paper and on the eye test, the Achilles heel of the Penguins this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be changes no matter what. You don't know if those players that you just mentioned will still be here. I think Michael Bunting will obviously stick around, and for what it's worth, tell you what, Pittsburgh's going to love him. He's not going to be Jake Gensel good, but Pittsburgh, this fan base is going to love this guy. He brings that Patrick Hornquist type stick to the front of the net. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen him do it too much yet, but get under an opponent's skin. There are certain aspects that I think this fan base will really enjoy, and we'll just see what happens with Riley Smith and Rickard Rakell. Really, I think Brian Rust sticks around at least through his no-move clause in his contract. As for Smith and Rakell, I mean, I went on a little mini rant to myself about this yesterday. I think I texted you about it. Just why were we all expecting them to be traded? Really, who was going? Kyle Dubas wanted futures. He wanted prospects rather than picks. Who's gonna trade away their top prospects for a cooked Riley Smith? Who's gonna trade away their top prospects for an expensive and long-term Rickard Rakell? It just wasn't gonna happen.
Smith more likely than Rakell, because Rakell's long-term contract makes that very, very difficult, especially in the middle of a season that is one of his worst of the past half decade. Yeah, I understand Rakell. Smith, I was a little surprised about, because I thought people would see the upside and just see it as a bad fit in Pittsburgh with 1 year left. But, at the end of the day, these guys didn't get moved. The consequence is you have less space to try out younger guys.